Hello and welcome to another Nature Mystic discussion. I'm Hank and this is Melissa, and we're here just to talk about the Katari tradition, which is all based on this guy, Don Zane Kerfman, author of Inca Mountain Magic, who's been with us almost every week, but he's doing another event today. So we're flying solo without our teacher, which is how we started, so it's okay.
We've been left unattended.
Yeah, we've been left unattended. You never know, we might run amok. But all of this is to bring you information from the tradition so that you might feel inclined to maybe learn a little bit more. We have our apprenticeship starting next week. I can't believe it that it's already here, that we're going to be starting the next round of apprenticeship. But even if you're watching on a replay, we're always offering something with Zane, whether it's a despacho class or an apprenticeship program or some sort of online thing. So like if you feel called, follow the link in the description. You can find out more information about whatever things are coming up next. We already have Kathy saying, good morning, guys. Good morning. And we have no topic prepared for you. So let us know what questions you have. Or I have Zane's book and I'm going to, the green screen is messing with it, go through and just kind of pick a spot and see maybe if we talk a little bit about something in the book. So, but we'll give you a chance to ask questions first.
Yeah, Kathy, since you're going to be joining us, if you have any questions about what to expect, what to, just the whole thing in general. Do you need to bring anything? Do you have expectations? Are you nervous? Like, what might you be nervous about if you're willing to share? What's the agenda for that first weekend? Do we know if it's like our first few times or is it?
No, I emailed and I haven't heard back yet, so I don't know yet. I don't want to give too much of the specifics, but like the Friday night, we will be meeting in the field, like not literally a field, but we're going to go to Holy Love Ministries because the very first part of the work takes place in a place and space where you can easily connect to the upper world. So we use Holy Love for that. That'll be Friday. And I can tell you Saturday, we'll be driving a lot. Don't know where to yet for sure, but we'll be doing 4 different activities if everything moves out timely wise that we'll be doing in nature. And then Sunday will be more around the mesa and unpacking what just happened is the first weekend.
Yeah, I always called Saturdays our field trip days because it was always the day that we're out running around doing initiations, being in nature. And Sunday was kind of like, okay, let's talk about the theory behind what we did, how and why for what we did. Because the being out in nature and actually doing it, I found that it was very helpful to keep that logical mind out and to not let it interrupt you. You were just doing and following Zane. I kind of pictured us like little ducks following him around everywhere. And he's like, well, now we're going to do this. Okay. And it wasn't until Sunday that you're like, this is why we did it. So, but Saturdays were field trip days in my head.
And I think that's the best way to go into the weekends. Like it's one thing to know the agenda, like generally, but you really want to go in with as little expectation or idea of what's happening to begin with, because you want to just be in the raw experience. And if you have heard about what Melissa experience was or my experience, then it might question. We talked about this last week, how Zane did this exercise and Melissa had like one particular experience, but somebody else started sharing first. And then she's like, oh no, I did it wrong. But she didn't do it wrong. So like you really want to allow yourself to have your own experience and be not as little tainted from our past experiences as possible.
Yeah. So I think a good general thing for all the weekends is anticipate probably the Saturdays, having loose, comfy movement allowing clothing, because when we're out and about, like you want to have good shoes. Don't forget your sunscreen, have some water.
And prepare for any weather. Like as we do these rain or shine. In fact, Zane would say that if we do have quote unquote, let's call it animated weather. It's like a good thing because the nature spirits are coming out to meet you. I think any weather is fine, honestly, whether it's beautiful weather or stormy weather. It's like that is the correct conditions for that group, for whatever the experience was gonna be. But we've been in the middle of something before where it started having like a little mini monsoon, and that was beautiful.
Yeah, that particular weekend where we were up, what park was it?
Something ledges,
Yeah, not
not
Nelson's.
Nelson's ledges, but then it's Whip's ledges maybe.
I think
There's
so.
an upper and a
Sounds right.
lower part, and yeah, we went out to this big field for a flowering ceremony, and next thing you know,
Yeah, and it was kind of appropriate because it was the whole like flowering in Wiracocha's garden, and we were up on this. We had to trek up this hill. Here now it's gonna be raining, and so wet, trekking uphill all around whip sledges. So be prepared. You know, keep an eye on the weather the night before. Have a change of clothing ready to go if you need it. I did. I hate the feel of wet denim, so I could not wait
yeah,
to change clothing, but we do our initiations and practice regardless of the weather outside. So you'll
yeah.
see me walking around like the little goth girl with umbrellas and sunscreen and keeping in the shade. If you have to join me there, welcome. But just be prepared for outsideness on
Yeah.
Saturdays.
Yeah, and bring snacks and things because, like, I would say that this work, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, like you move a lot of energy, and there's been times where like I've had a full breakfast or lunch, and we do an exercise, and all of a sudden I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have to eat or I'm going to die. And so it's always good to have some snacks and things on hand too, in case you suddenly have a need to take care for the body,
Hmm.
take care of the body rather.
Yeah. But we are still waiting to find out what like tangible items that you might need to bring. Because I did get this question already from another
Mhm.
student, and I'm like, well, I can tell you what we had to bring. I don't know if that has shifted a little bit.
For certain, you will need to bring with you uh, whatever you consider your most sacred medicine piece to be,
Hmm.
whatever that's going to be. You may not need to have it Friday during the exercise, but when we sit down to build our mesa for the first time on Sunday, um, you'll need the sacred medicine piece. And then Zane he's going to be sending out an email to everybody this first week that will say, here's a list of items. And if all of a sudden you're just like, oh my gosh, I need to get all this stuff, just breathe. If you don't have something, it's okay. But you're going to want to be on the lookout for a shell. You'll want to be on the lookout for a feather, whether you're asked to have them this first time, or even if you didn't have them, won't matter. But you want to start feeling out like what shell calls to you if you happen to run across one, or what feather.
Feel free to buy one in nature. Obviously, we sell them, but it doesn't have to be
Mhm.
store bought. It doesn't have to be big. At some point, you're going to need a white candle, white 7 day. Um,
Mhm.
and your most sacred piece does not have to be a stone. It can be a piece of jewelry. It's okay if it's a
Mhm.
crucifix. It's okay if it's something that somebody in the family line gave you and it's been handed down. Like whatever your
Yeah.
most sacred spiritual piece might be, or something that really resonates for you that you just comforts you, helps you. That would be
Mhm.
the piece to bring, regardless of what it looks like. Um, I don't think we've had anything show up that we were kind of like,
No.
really.
Well,
So
we've had people take big statues before, and then of course,
mhm,
like when you go to build your bundled Misha, you'll pick something that represents that big thing or whatnot. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Because you don't want to
very
wrap
cool.
that. It's not
Well,
going
you
to
don't
wrap.
want to carry around.
Feel free to try. You're going to have a really big centerpiece, and you might be a little hesitant then to use it in other healing parts because you're going to have this big bumpy thing, and you don't want to break your statue. Um, but for those that might be local, if you want to take a peek at what one looks like, mine is currently at the store and set up. You can come ask questions about the different pieces. Give me a heads up, just because running around like crazy, and like I will not be at the store this Sunday. So Sunday, this current timeline is the only day you can't come in and ask me questions because I will not be there. Um, and Hank, when are you gonna do the in person and have like the community one set up for like a
I
comparison?
I think well, I can show a picture of it here in a moment, but I believe the next one. Uh, what month are we in?
We're in April.
April. Let me go back here. Actually, well, I didn't have one maybe the 30th on Tuesday in the store. I can set that up. In fact, that sounds really like last day of the month. Then it's a Tuesday. I will confirm, but maybe I'll do more than one. But the 30th for like the healing clinic, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a set time, but I'm like just looking at my calendar now, and the 30th, I will set up a community mesa at the store. I might have been planning for the first Tuesday, but I want to, if I did, then I already missed this one because of spring break with the kids. So we can do the 30th of April.
But the first weekend's always, it's exciting because it's like you get to start something. You don't know what you're going to expect. And you get to meet a lot, it could be a handful, depending on the size of everybody partaking. Because we always get last minute, it's like, oh my God, can I? Of course. People that are going to be on that same path. And I think year after year, people just keep making new supportive friends, new people that they reach out to, separately, and they continue working on that path together. Not necessarily going through the exact same things, but supportive. So if you make that connection with somebody and you're like, I'm comfortable with them, and as well as reaching out to any of the teachers, that is perfectly fine. But it's always good. It's kind of like that nice, think of like the first day of college. It was kind of like you go in and you're a little nervous, and it's, kind of like that open house in a way. Like you get introduced to all of the finer points, and then the next time you come in, that next month is when it really starts kind of kicking off, and start being given homeworks and things to do. And hey, EMC. So not as much pressure on that first weekend. It's kind of coming in, get your toes wet, ask questions, get to know everybody. First field trip outside on Saturday, and then it's going to kick off. No more whining come May.
Sorry, I just had to post this in the group real quick. One thing that I think is really interesting about this group, just seeing compared to past groups, we have so many new students. Like we have a couple alumni. Of course, there's you and me, but there's a lot of new students, and that's a very exciting thing. Just kind of like a whole new generation in a sense of Paqos. Because in the past, we sometimes have had just a handful of new people, and then it's all alumni because they love taking it so much. But
Yeah.
so it's kind of like we have like the flip of that this time. So I'm really excited to see what new things are going to come to be from this new group, because the more new people there are, I think like the potential of Zane bringing up stuff he's never done before is greater.
Mm-hmm. And
sure.
Certain weekends may have a couple extra people pop in here and there, because some of the alumni will come back for 1 or 2 weekends that are their favorite. Like I already know one is like every time I see her, she's like, death rates. When's the death rates? And I'm like, I know, I can't wait. I can't wait for my vacation. I want my vacation this time. So some weekends.
Do I get to put you down? Can I put you down? I'm kidding.
Right. Well, and at some point, like when I set my mesa up at the store and we were doing some employee support and healing, and I brought that in, and I've left it there on purpose because I'm like, tearing that down and setting it up for me is because I've got bigger pieces, and it's a challenge making sure everything arrives safely. So I'm like, I'm just going to leave it here until at least the first weekend. So employees, I'm like, feel free to charge things, or if you need something during the day, that's fine. Just give it back. But as we were going through, and they've been asking questions, and they're like, well, how long? How much can I? And I'm like, I can't have my whole staff in the apprenticeship. I guess I could. I'm like, well, I'm no longer helping teach because all of my staff are students. Somebody has to run the store. So we may see, because one of the other healers who sat in for that is also very, very interested. So that's why I said we may have some even more last minute. But
there, I have a couple people who've been thinking about it, tutoring on it, and so we may have a couple people from me too. That's know. It's like people know, even one person, they weren't sure they wanted to do it, and then all of a sudden when they were presented with a conflict on that date, it created clarity. So like if you're on the fence, know that you're going to have this moment of clarity. You're like, okay, I know it, I'm going to sign up. And And this is the big mesa. I'll just draw up this little picture. Ta-da! That's one of the community mesa spreads that I've done in the past, where you have your center little Misha in the center, and then this is a Guachimero mesa spread. And it kind of symbolizes the Andean cross, and each step has a talking point, and then the lower satellite, if you want to call it that, is for the Earth, and then the one to the left of that is for the water and the moon, and the one above is for the wind, and to the right is the sun. And you will have something not the same, but similarly inspired. But it could just be one cloth. It doesn't have to be that elaborate. It could just be. I remember Brian, our first year, like you would think he would have like this craziest mesa spread because he always did things really grandiose is the word I want to use. And then when he built his mesa in class, it was like just on a little handkerchief. And it was the cutest little small mesa. And then you had my mesa and you had everything in between. But the reason I have it more elaborate is because I do teach the tradition. I look to encapsulate a little bit more from like how Zane teaches and keep it, though I make it my own, I like to keep it as similar to the original teachings as possible, and then clarify where I have added an embellishment or my own thing versus like how it was taught to me. Because I relish that this is an unbroken lineage going back. It's a living tradition, but it's an unbroken tradition, and so like trying to keep those roots intact is important to me.
Mm-hmm. I do like the simplicity of the unbroken, and there's none of this. Well, this got added such and such, and this is over here. Like you can embellish on your own and chain it back. I still want Zane to do like a genealogy teacher tree for us, because sometimes I'm like, who, what, which one again? Which one begot who taught who did what when?
That would be nice. So like a Reiki lineage tree, like how they
Kind
show
of.
that. That would be cool.
Because he's got teachers and he's still in contact with quite a few of them. There are some that have passed. And so just remembering, because for me personally, you can say names all day long until I have a face to put with the name. They're just names that float around. So I'm like, it would be real helpful, sir, if you would just make a tree. For inquiring minds, I'd just like to know.
We just got to pin them down one day at lunch with a piece of paper and just make it, and then we can beautify it a little bit. I know he's done that before, calling in the not directions, but calling in the different spirits. When we do Quiche, which is the rainbow, you'll hear him say Don Oscar Vargas, and he'll start just calling in all the people he's worked with, all the lineage holders. And so like we've had it, in experiential communication with from Zane, but never like just actually put down on paper.
Right. Well, if it's just the calling in doesn't necessarily mean it was in any sort of order. It's just who, so, so I'm like, we've heard these names. Where do they go? And I think at one point he talks in the book some, but it's not laid out. Yeah. And because he's gone down different times and trained. So he's got many years down in Peru, many different trainings with different teachers. So that's where I'm like, who and when? When?
Just in the time that I've known him, I've known that he's had additional training, and I have seen you've seen his work and how he teaches and what he teaches evolve. And the thing that I think with the new age of AI, and he's talked about this on the past streams, is the ability to parallel metaphor with quantum physics. It's not quantum physics, but the computer age and AI and everything has given us abilities to use metaphors that can kind of give a better container for you to hold the data in, if that makes sense. I was going to look in here for that lineage stuff, but
just feel free, ask questions. Karen, I know you are thinking maybe at some point. So if you have any questions, be it for now or later, but you just have a question about the tradition. Kathy, if you have any more questions, because we kind of came in without a topic. We don't have Zane, so we are left unattended. So, questions are helpful. But yeah, otherwise we're kind of like rambling and trying to anticipate what you might be thinking of or have questions and maybe feel a little nervous to ask. If you're on Twitch and you have questions, you can always shoot over a whisper, and I can read the question off without, ratting you out. Uh, but otherwise, it might be a little bit of a shorter stream just because I want
Yeah,
to keep
we
it
don't
up.
want to ramble at you. If you are on the fence though, and it doesn't seem feasible for you, please reach out to me and at least have a conversation and see if we might be able to work out something that will make it doable for you. So that would be
Mhm.
really good. And Karen, is this Karen too? I'll be ready
Uh-huh.
soon with my gnome
Oh, I
buddy.
gotta pop out real quick. Hang on. Continue on.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm all by myself. Oh my gosh. So if you have any questions or comments or inspirations, let me know. I will share with you. I've told this story many times, but these are chumpy stones. And I just happen to have them. And since I need to talk, since Melissa's gone, I'm just going to show them. So, I'm going to turn this camera off real quick, actually, because I want to be able to show you without my virtual background. So, done. Okay. Oh, what did I do? I totally messed up now. Oh my gosh. This backfired terribly, terribly. Oh no. What did I do? Okay. So now I'm going to change it. Bear with me. I really apologize for that. Okay. So these are chumpy stones. And these originally were made out of shells, and now it's out of alabaster meteorites. And a traditional one is 5. So here's my number 3 points. And the points aren't really important. In the program, you will end up working with them, and you can just pick stones and label them 1 through 5 if you wanted to. But these were a gift from my friend Dave Orlasky, who is my roommate when I went to Fellowships of the Spirit for my training for mediumship. And these are used to weave like these energy belts. But the beautiful thing about these is they were a gift to me. And Dave was like, he gave them to me at Inspiration Stump. He actually had intended them as a gift for himself, but Spirit told him give them to Hank. And then I asked him, well, what do you do with them? And he's like, I have no idea. And so I started Googling chumpy stones and all that. And what I found was this book. And this is just to show the beautiful serendipity of the universe. And like there are no coincidences, there's only God instances. And so when I go and I started finding this book, when you get to one of these chapters, it actually has a whole chapter on the chumpy. And that's when I reached out to Zane and I said, hey, brother, I would love to learn these chumpy stones. And he said, well, I'd be happy to teach you, but it's part of a longer apprenticeship. And I said, well, what's involved in the apprenticeship? And here's the chumpy chapter in the book, which tells you what they are a little bit, but it doesn't teach you how to use them. And he said, well, in order to do that, we need so many people. And here's this, it takes a couple of years to go through. I'm like, no, we really want to do this like more quickly. And I worked with him and we started to host them for 1 and 2 day workshops. And then the apprenticeship was born out of that. This 7-weekend trek that we're offering that starts next weekend was all because I wanted to learn these. And I asked Melissa, can we host it at Goddess Elite? Please, I need a place that we can have as a home base as we go out to these nature places. And that's how the apprenticeship was born. And I hosted Zane for the first time for a class, I think in the summer of 2014. And then the second time in November 2014. And we just did these little 1 day and 2 day workshops on like an overview of the tradition. Speaking with the Voice of Mountains was one of the names of another one. And we just built enough interest. And in 2016, this whole thing just kind of popped. And then with COVID, we had an in-person group, but we had to go virtual. And so we went virtual. And now this year we're offering like this blending of the in-person and the online, like this deepening that when we went online, though we didn't have the experiential component of the initiations, which you really have to do in person. You can't do those online really, because the whole point in this tradition is you go out to where the energy is naturally occurring and you have your experience with it. Like, so you go to a cave to go to the underworld, you go to a church or a high point to go to the upper world, or that kind of thing. So like but we were able to go deeper into the knowledge piece of it when we had the online. So now we're bringing them together and we're having both the in-person initiations and in between the online, and it's just phenomenal. I wasn't expecting to stall, Melissa, so I talked randomly, kind of.
I heard from the other room. What did I do? Oh no, this backfired.
Oh no, I was trying to turn my virtual background off so the green screen wouldn't keep cutting out, and then my whole camera went off, and I was just gone. Yeah, it was very traumatizing. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sticking around.
Did you answer Kathy about Fridays?
No. Let's see. So Kathy, are you missing this Friday or the first are you missing the first Friday? The short answer is, if you're going to miss the first Friday, let's meet ahead of time so I can do for you the first exercise.
Mhm.
If you miss something, either me or Melissa or both, we would take you and catch you up before the next weekend, because the weekends from the initiation point, especially the first 3 weekends, they all build on each other. So if you were going to miss like this first weekend, I would probably be the one to catch up because I'm the more flexible schedule, or Melissa, or both, like I said. But we would catch you up before the next weekend. So like the more in advance we know, the better. And if we knew that you're going to miss Saturday but not Sunday, I would try to catch you up before the rest of the students. Actually, like I would try to do for you. You'll be there for this weekend. Very good, very very good. Because that first weekend, like that Friday night, really like that's really good to be there for that whole thing, because that first weekend is such an immersion in everything else, and then from there everything else is built. But if you know you're going to miss like the Saturday of the second weekend, I would even be inclined to try to meet with you before the rest of the students and catch you up, so like when you come in on Sunday, you've already had what they had, and you're not behind. If you're there for, like, if you're missing one whole weekend, that's one thing, but if you missed Friday, Saturday, but not Sunday, then I could have you caught up before you miss it.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
So you're coming in at the same timeline. So let us know.
And then the other thing that we do is like when we've gone to sites before and like someone looks at the mountain, they're like, yeah, I can't do that. I'm not climbing up that mountain. So like they might stay in the parking lot, just as another example of how we work with that. And what the group would do is we would kind of hold space and hold the bubble, and we would call your I don't want to use the word shadow self in a negative context, but an aspect of you to, and we're like holding the incubator for that aspect of you. So you're receiving kind of as a relay station in a way. And then we can do the same thing when we come back. So there's different ways to get around if you miss something with the group, whether you're actually in person and simply can't go up the mountain or down into a cave or something like that, that you're not going to miss out on the energetic quality because the rest of the group is holding space for you.
Mm-hmm. Which, you know, we are completely open and can work around physical limitations. So
yeah, she's not probably climbing any mountains. The closest mountain you might climb, and there's a gentler way to get up there, is Fort Hill, like down in Olmsted Falls. There's those steps that go all the way up to where those earthworks, and we have used that in the past for different things. And so there's a high probability we will do that on one of the excursions, but there is a more gentle way to go up or down that peak. Mm-hmm. And then other than that, the other one is, there might be one time where we drive a little bit further south, and there's a little bit, it's not really a mountain, but if we were to go to Cross Mound, there is a bit of a walk up to the earthworks there too. That's like a 3-hour drive. I'm not looking forward to that, but it may be something we do in this run of the program.
Oh, what the heck. 3 hours. I'm not helping drive that one. I would be falling asleep while driving. So
you can come in my van. I have
would be
8 people.
Myself and anybody else in the car with me. So road hypnosis is a thing.
Yeah.
Parents, be aware, you drive your kid around and put them asleep, it will work later in life as well.
Yeah. Now, Kathy, if you were to miss something like that, then it would be likely that I would catch you up on something more local than drive to Cross Mountain again. And that's, if we did do that, I would think that it would probably be the third weekend, if I had to guess. If for planning reasons, if that's one that you would plan not to miss, that would be a good weekend not to miss. Mm-hmm. But I understand with schedules, sometimes it's just how it works out, and then we just do our best to accommodate and flip.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We find ways and work around.
Yeah. What other questions do people have, if any? Oh, another thing, though it's not required, I would definitely invest your, get a rattle. If you like a little rattle, Melissa loves noisemakers and a little bell. Melissa has all that stuff at the store, I'm sure. Something that resonates with you.
Hmm. So, and they don't have to be overly elaborate. You can make your own
Mm-hmm.
rattles. I think we had a student one year get like some shells and put beans and put like a little bit of craft hide and made their own. And that's perfectly fine too. So if you're crafty and you'd rather make your piece by hand for your sacred area, that's just as well. So nothing has to be elaborate and big and fancy. Though I will say, bell wise, yes, you can go to stores, Goodwills, and get little ceramic porcelain bells. Just keep in mind sometimes durability.
Mm-hmm. I like the metal bells myself. I have a thing for like these little copper bells with a wooden striker inside, but any bell will do. It's kind of like you're ringing the dinner bell for spirit. You're offering, you're ringing the little bell, and you're calling spirit, and it's like they're coming to eat that feast of the energy you're offering. And so
Mhm.
the bells, probably one of the most important things, even more important than the rattle. The little carol have their little bells, and they're just going, just going crazy, ringing their little bells. And rattles is secondary, drums is secondary. The bell is the most thing I've seen used.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So even if
Question.
you don't need it for the first weekend, just slowly accumulate. You'll need it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, and I can't show you because it's at the store. So for years, colleagues of mine, Joe and Lisa of Maple House Arts, had this little shell that has like a little piece of peridot on one end and like quartz on the other. And I love this little shell all the time, but I just went and buy it. I'm like, what am I going to do it for? And I'd always like, hi, little friend, and leave it there. And every time Joe and Lisa, like I would run into them at other shows, it would be there. And Joe is like, when are you going to finally take your friend home? Like you, oh, I'm like, so then I had this little shell and it just sat on like my curio for the longest time. And then here comes the apprenticeship. And when he's like, you need a shell. And I'm like, oh, it already knew before I did. Like, okay, so you might already have a piece waiting to do some
Mm-hmm.
work for you and with you. Um,
It's
but
fun. I never knew that story about your shell. I didn't realize that it was
mhm.
inspired like that. That's really cool.
So and kind of the same thing with my big piece of kyanite that's in my Pachamama area. Like I bought a whole bag of kyanite because I wanted that one piece. And I'm like, that one right there, that one's mine. Why, you know? And again, it sat around and the student, he was like, oh, you need a, and I'm like, oh, that's where you live now. Okay. So
Don't you have a really cool piece for your ET piece too, with like a geode or something? Or am I thinking of something else?
yeah, no, I've got a little carnelian freeform and it's got this druzy little pocket in there. And there is a little being that lives in there that came with the stone. So there's a whole little extra guy in that stone that has its own little being that lives in there. Um, it's always interesting when people don't know this and they're like, "Ooh, there's something in there," and I'm like, "Yes, there is." His name is Hector. Not really. I just made it up. But so those pieces are kind of like the only so I'm kind of waiting for the Wyra. You know, I've got the pieces there and everything, but Wyra has not. I take that back because now the feathers, and I had so many give me feathers that I probably should not own.
Oops.
Um, we'll leave it at that. But the shell and the kyanite piece were already kind of like in my possession, just kind of waiting for their place to be established when the whole thing was being set up. So what are the thoughts of having ashes on your mesa? I think it is a great way in working with the ancestors, and I would probably have them somewhere close to the middle in that kuichi where your ancestors, because that center space is what represents the expansion out this way, where around comes this way.
Yeah. And it may be something you put on the mesa depending on what kind of work you're doing, because like to start with, if you don't have an ancestor altar, You might have it in one place on the mesa, and as you start working with them, move it around the mesa and like give them a trip around the mesa as you elevate your ancestors or that type of thing, because that's definitely part of this work. And I was thinking by the Peruvian piece, which is the ancestor stone that you would have eventually as part of this work. They have a mother and father stone, and then there's another stone that represents like the lineage or the other ancestors. So, but yeah, definitely would be a good one to have on there.
Yeah, I guess really then, because we have two different places, depending on what their relationship to you was. Maybe if they
Hmm.
were an ancestor that was teaching you traditions, even if it's like family cooking and, that Nana maybe was the kitchen witch and she was teaching you that. So it just kind of depends. And it might shift. Pieces move around all the time.
Hmm.
So maybe in depending on the work that you're doing for yourself or your client and what that ancestor is for and with you might shift where they sit.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of sending things around the base because there's like a process of alchemy that all this really happens from a solid to a liquid to a gas to a plasma, and then elevating. And so depending on what about animal ashes? I think there's no right or wrong to this. If you're called to have them on the mesa for some reason, then you can do that. And then it's a question of like what meaning do you choose to create around it, and what healing do you choose to create around it? Because if you're being called to do it, it's not just a random inspiration. I don't believe it would be some element of that is going to be a service to you, and maybe the ashes are going to help you connect to the mothers of creation, which are all animals. For example, maybe it's a bridge for you to be able to better connect with the mothers of creation, the mother serpent and mother jaguar, and the condor and the hummingbird. So yeah, I would definitely put them on. The more stuff on the mesa, the merrier. Except for when you have to take it down and take it home, and then you're like, oh no, there's too many things on here. Why did I put all this stuff out here? I have to take it home now.
um, which is why I kind of subconscious. I'm like, I'm not adding it anymore. Not anytime soon. Every sit up and tear down. I'm like, man, I look like the bag lady and I'm running away from home.
Well, the fun thing for me was the one year Zane decided I'm going to move to California and you have to fly me in for every weekend. That happened, and then of course he wasn't bringing his whole mesa. I brought the stuff and I'm setting it up, and I'm like, I really appreciate this more, because Zane would always come in and he would be setting it up for so long and tearing it down for so long. Well, I got to do all that fun stuff, and
Wow.
there's so much to put there, but at the same time you could just keep it super simple. It could have been just as easily a handkerchief in the center of the room with 5 or 6 items on it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. So don't feel that you have to emulate the volume of stuff that I'm going to be putting on the mesa.
I was going to say, is Zane bringing his or is the community one getting used?
We haven't talked about that. I'm going to guess.
Dear Zane.
I I don't know. Maybe we'll build it together. Maybe we'll rotate. Maybe we haven't talked about it. I would like him to bring his stuff.
Let him schlep all the things.
I selfishly would like Zay. Well, for sure, it would be nice for him to bring things to put on the mesa at minimum. But when it comes to cloths and things, like he definitely doesn't have to worry about any of that. But we shall see. Questions, guys, comments, inspirations. The question about the ashes was great. What other questions might you have about anything, program related or not? Because we can always circle it back to the program.
Sounds like a challenge.
It's not that hard of a challenge. Pretty easy. What should you use for a cloth? Anything will do. We've even had one of our students just use a bath towel, and he would wrap his stuff up in that and just put down a towel. It really doesn't, whatever is going to work for you. Eventually, like what we had one person in class make everybody a mesa cloth. That was a beautiful gift from our first year. Made a beautiful cloth that they gave people, and then I found a cloth one time that just looked kind of shamana, and I picked that for my cloth, and then I ended up getting cloths from Peru, and I would go through a nonprofit. Or Zane sometimes has cloths. Like if you feel like you really want a Peruvian one, you're able to change the cloth over time. You don't have to stick with the same cloth. And then if Zane happens to have cloths, um, you could get a cloth from Zane and support someone directly that Zane knows and gets them from, which is always cool. Because sometimes if you're just getting it online and it's like they're really expensive. And sometimes those people go there and they're getting cloths for like a super cheap amount, and they're just really upcharging and then upcharging and then upcharging. They're still pricey, but like I really like by getting from places that support the local community. So I usually get it from a nonprofit or from Zane, are the two places that I get my cloths from personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they don't necessarily always have to be Peruvian, right? My
Nope.
Kintu, Misha, is actually just blue cloth from Joanne Fabric.
Yep.
I've actually had it be Nightmare Before Christmas print cloth before. That was perfectly fine. So you can use whatever is called to you. So you can get a hold and try and, get a Peruvian cloth if you want to be, in the tradition. But if you're like, man, I really want to work with green cloth, go for it.
Yep. And how big they should be, they could be literally as small as a handkerchief, though I think practically speaking, like 18 inches by 20, like 24 by 24, I feel is a good size. It gives you enough space to have everything on there that you're going to need to have. If you do just go with a handkerchief, while that will work, you might be a little cozy by the end of the accumulation process, we'll call it.
Yeah. You might have to downsize some things to fit on your handkerchief. But there's no rule of how and where it needs to come from. You'll need a big one and probably at least a center one to put your little despacho that you will be making for your mesa, and then one for your kintu. You don't have to have ones on, that lay on top of the big one for each direction. I have those. I think you have those as well, Hank.
Yep.
But you do not. They can just sit right on your main. Your pieces can sit right on the main without the cloth in between the two if you wanted. Because some of this, at least for like me, when I'm setting up or tearing down, it's kind of like that mental, like, I'm taking apart this piece and I'm giving my thanks and my, honor for doing that work. And when I reset it up, same thing. So it's that little extra to help me remember what I'm doing, but you don't have to. And like I said, mine right now, my Kintu is blue for what I do and work with. So
your cloth could literally be different every single time too. If you find something better, it could be an evolution process. So don't feel like once you pick something, you're stuck with it. You're not.
I will say though, it's easier in the folding of your Kintu if it's a square. If it's a square piece of cloth, don't come in, do it if you want, jagged snowflake or whatever, because when it comes time to fold that, it's going to be a challenge later.
Yeah. A nice thing, though, not required, is if your cloth has some sort of stripes, because there is something with the folding of it. You start it vertical, and when you do fold it, the stripes end up being along the divine diagonal. So though that is a cool artistic thing, it's not required, but that's one thing if you do want to keep in mind, a cloth with stripes, where you would have that effect after you bundle it, but it's not required.
Yeah, because mine's just plain blue.
Yeah, but I figured I even picked a cloth that had a rainbow in it because I wanted the divine diagonal to have a rainbow. So my cloth had it was perfect for what I wanted to create with it. Mm-hmm. But that you really make this your own. It is kind of like a painting of your soul. If you want to think of the mesa like that, when you start to build this, or if you're going to build an altar for yourself, even if it's not from this tradition, like you're really putting a reflection of yourself into what you're creating. And, even if you keep it simple, like what meaning can you put into it that would make it super special and relevant for you?
Mm-hmm. Another thing kind of popping in for your Kintu. Personal recommendation, have your cloth be a little thicker. or have it big enough that you can fold it over into a square. And that's only because like there's going to be kintus in there. You're going to have stones, some sacred pieces. And depending on how big and heavy your sacred piece is, you don't want your fabric to constantly be falling out or being extra, like you just don't want it to wear away or just kind of come undone because of the weight. So like my blue kintu is actually folded over into the square to help give it that durability and to hold the things there. So you know, it's just kind of like working with those because you don't want to be in the middle of a healing ceremony and your kintu falls apart from the weight. Right. So like, oh, well, there goes my sacred piece rolling across the floor. Go get it. So,
well, the other thing is there's some things that you do where you might be using your misha and you're kind of tapping someone like a little forcefully. And if you have really thin cloth and you have a jagged stone, you might actually poke someone in a not so kind way. So that would be another thing. Like the thicker the cloth, the little bit more cushion there is for practical use and application of it as a whacking tool, we'll say.
like when we're tempted to whack Zane into Lake Erie that time.
No,
Oh, just me. Okay.
Yeah, you realize you said that out loud, right?
I do, because I know he's not here.
But he's gonna watch this and he's gonna be like, I gotta be careful next time we're doing that lake ceremony with West Skarinka. I have to make sure that I don't go too close to Melissa.
Right. Hey, Sierra, put it on your belly. So the whole yeah, and actually I kind of demonstrated that during the keep that we had. I had our facilitator stand up because I'm like, you can take this, and I was like, this right here, and like, don't fall in the lake. And he took it well. So some of that sacred play. We show love by bullying, not really just me. So, but having that fabric be durable, thick enough for when you're putting your pieces and when you're wrapping it, that it's not like sagging down, because ultimately you don't want your pieces to kind of fall out, get broke themselves, or you know, hurt somebody when you're using them. So keep that in mind, because I know there's really cool, I think they call them what, like the swatches and like the quilting areas where, you know, they're nice and square. So depending on their thickness, you may either have to have one cut to size that you can fold to a square, or get a couple and layer them so they're thick enough to support that. But they can be any pattern, any color. My separate Misha is actually in Day of the Dead cloth, so Santa Muerte's on it.
Yeah, and if whatever cloth you use, you could also package it in another cloth, right? So they could have an inner cloth, and if it's kind of thin, you could put it into another cloth if you needed to, like add a little bit of padding to it.
So no, it's not violence. It's tough love, Karen. Tough love.
Magic Mike, what are you talking about? You wanted to go tonight. Well, first you said you're out of here, and then you said wanted to go tonight. I don't know what thing you're talking about, so let us know if we can offer some clarity. Okay, and Judy's asking, how do you tie it up? What kind of cord or string? She has an inspiration about a cloth, now thinking about a ribbon or cord to tie it. Traditionally, there is something called a watani, and kids learn how to make them before they learn how to weave cloth. So it's kind of like an early thing for the Carol children. They're making these little watanis, and it's like these little plastic beads on like really thin threads, and you use that to tie the cloth. That is traditional, but anything will do. You could use a shoelace, you can use ribbon, you could use paracord, anything literally to tie it one way and tie it the other way, just like you would tie a Christmas present. But if you want something more traditional, the watani would be, which just means like Taiwantan means 4-way. It's just watani is to tie.
Oh, he's meaning the despacho down in Athens.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's down in Athens, Zane is, that's why Zane's not here today. There was an event down in Athens and he's presenting, and it's a whole day of stuff that ends with the actual Carol doing a despacho. I don't know if they still have space or anything like that, but if anybody's interested in that, if you message me after I confirm there's availability, I'm happy to send you the registration link, because you could go for the whole day, which that's 3 hours away. If you're local and you're not there already, you're missing it. But if you want to go to the despacho tonight, because you could just do the despacho, I'm sure that would be available. It's like a 3-hour drive from Cleveland. So, yeah. Oh,
I
scared
think
some.
I found beaded lace. I think it was Packet Hands. There's not a Packet Hands anymore, but I think that's where. But
Michael's.
most craft stores, yeah, will have like beaded lace, and that's what I use to tie mine up. So, get crafty. You might have something laying around that you never knew why you kept hanging on to that.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens, or you know, like I even have, and I think there may even be some in my kin too. It's been a minute. I had a great grandma that would quilt and make things, and she had these little quilting poofs, I guess. I don't know. I don't quilt. And, you know, I would use them to hold like the sacred space stones and they get wrapped up. So you may have things laying around. And I think my do not disturb wore off. I think it's been close to our hour or coming up on our hour. So now my phone's making all sorts of noises.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys have any more questions, now, Hank, you would be available today via Zoom or up at your office.
Correct. If anybody's looking for a one-on-one session, or if you want to talk about the program and see if it's possible for you to join us starting next weekend, I would be available for a discovery call or clarity call, however you want to call it. And yeah, every Tuesday and Thursday, I'm available via Zoom through the Goddess Elite's website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any last minute questions, be it about the apprenticeship or just how the healing modality works in the tradition, or I don't know, slightly off topic. we know many things off site of this, and usually between the both of us, if we don't know it, we know who does and can direct you.
And we keep talking about doing a random stream about everything else besides the program. We have just not
Oh yeah,
gotten around to it yet.
Forgot about that.
You know, one of the streams I really loved, we had that the sobriety streams, like spirituality, sobriety, and all that. With
I haven't done that in forever.
That was a really cool stream we could recreate. And the other thing I loved, though I think we should do it before your psychic fairs, is when all the readers came on, we were just kind of talking to people, but we did it after the fair, and then people got to know us, and they would have to wait till the following fair to get a reading. So maybe doing it leading up to a fair would be a cool experience.
For new friends, that was called Goddess Elite After Hours, and that was kind of like the professionalism. I don't want to say gone, but it was more of
relaxed.
It was relaxed. It was goofing off. You could ask the readers how they got into it, or it wasn't to get free readings. It was how they got started, what our thoughts were, hot takes, buttons and questions. But we would do it after the fair, and it was the Goddess Elite After Hours. And it was a lot of silliness and goofing off, which, during the eclipse, we were there Monday. And we closed the store for that hour. We had a couple people, and the one girl hung out with us in the parking lot, and she got to see some shenanigans because it was myself, Lucinda, Sierra was there, Greg was there, which is where most came from, and Stacia. So, she hung out with all of the shenanigans and kicked in, in some of it herself, and we all had a good time. So you get to see some of the conversation that happens when the store's empty. And so I don't know, we could see, how that, plays around again. The eclipse, it was very, very awesome, and wheeled my mesa outside on the rolling table for it. And we charged like damn near every crystal skull in the eclipse as well. Because Sierra will be doing a crystal skull workshop, and we're going to have a monthly meetup to where you can bring your skull and make friends and meditate and find out what they have to say. Do you really want to know what your skull thinks about you when you forget to feel the tequila glass?
I know what he thinks about you when you forget to feel the tequila
I need to get
glass.
tequila, not for myself, but for my big lava rock skull. It was fun. Sitting.
Oh, is that Sierra? Skullkeeper?
So I probably should have brought Bob out there, but Bob was off taking care of having fun on his own. And he's heavy, and then I'd have to bring all the other ones, and that's just not fair.
He'd be jealous.
but yeah, so maybe the after hours, the sobriety, that one is just everybody's schedule, finding time in everybody's schedule and who would want. Okay, so I didn't want to rat you out, and for a minute there, I was like, oh, don't say your name. Maybe she don't want people to know. But
well, context clues. I'm like, okay, well, they were definitely at the eclipse. They were definitely at the store. So, and then this does say Skull Keeper.
So I'll have to run it, see if and when Jim would be available.
Oh gosh.
Jim was a part of that. Brittany.
But now I'm thinking about if I brought all my skulls and Sarah brought all her skulls and we had all the store skulls, how many skulls would that be? I can't even, it's a lot.
Would be a little much, I think. Be a lot chattering and yeah.
Oh, but the sacred geometry, the grid work we could do with all these skulls, and maybe this is a cool thing to consider. Maybe. Bob at the center, of course. Maybe if he's up for
it. He likes attention, of course he would be.
And then I got my 3 little mini Bobs that I could bring.
Well, you should just come to that monthly meetup. Bring a skull or 2 to that monthly meetup. And
or 10 or 20 doesn't. Oh, your back hurts thinking about it. Yeah.
All the schlepping of skulls.
Yeah, the last time I did a skull class at Goddess Elite, I filled it with like one of those collapsible baskets, and I'm carrying this thing, and I'm thinking this is a dumb idea to carry it in this collapsible basket because I don't have faith that this thing's going to hold up. But it did. But wow, it was a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be doing a monthly first Wednesday, if I remember correctly, meetup, crystal skull meetup. So if you have a crystal skull and you're like, I don't know what to do with it, or gee, what else can we do? And I want to meet other skull keepers and all that fun stuff. First Wednesdays.
Well, maybe when German Skull's done for the season, I will come up on one of those and bring some skulls and see what we can do.
So, and she's got a crystal skull like workshop coming up as well. And I do not have those dates right here, but check the website, goddesslate.com, go on the events page. There they be. It's also listed on Facebook. And if you're local and you're like, I don't know what to do with him, somebody gave me him or her. Sierra's there most Tuesday through Friday. I don't think she's missed one yet. Other than when she goes on vacation. How dare you go on vacation, Sierra? Jeez. So that's like a month or so out. So, yeah, if you've got crystal skull questions, because Hank's not in the store, you can come ask Sierra. But dragging them all out, I was like, ooh, if we did a big giant grid in the parking lot, talk about ramping up the energy. But then I'm like, the landlord, does he deserve it? Maybe not. I think in the field out in Holy Love would be way better. Awesome.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
In between the 2 statues, maybe? Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Plan it on the cool astrological event. I'm sorry, what?
There's that body of water behind them too. So you would have
that's
that
cool.
Pull in. And there's like that tree of alcove off on the one side. So there's so many of those elements right there with it. So Judy would come in for the massive skull grid.
Yeah.
So when
now you really got me thinking about this. This is going to be fun. I got to compare notes with. Yeah, this is cool. All right, there's a lot of new potential things unfolding here during the midst of this conversation. So we should do a stream just on crystal skulls too. Like if Sierra's up for that. I know you guys recently did one, but I think the body of knowledge that Sierra and I have come from different places, so it'd be kind of cool to talk together on it. Or we should hang out first and make sure our information drives first before just going public with it. I think it would be fun to chat with Sierra about those.
The big skulls.
Yeah, about anything skulls. And there's some science behind it. Cause when I teach, I always like bringing the science part in. So it's like, yeah, before it was carved, it did this. with a little scientific thing, and after carved is done this, and like just being able to show that there's actual science behind the shifts in what happens with the skull once it's carved. Just one little thing that I love.
Yeah, I think she was talking something about that earlier, like a day or two ago. And she's like, "Did you know?" And I'm like, "No, nope, didn't read that one. Nope." So yeah, we might have to have a coming together of you two at least, and comparing notes and how would you want to do it, and then deciding when and where. What all is going to happen and take place. So, because a little side note, I was seeing in one of the groups that Crystal Skull Max finally had been sold, and the new owner is not doing anything with him yet right now. So there could be a need, at least for local people, to get this information, how and why and what to do, because one of the big guys is kind of like chilling with the new owner right now. So there's a need for some information.
There is skulls, though, that we have. I'm sure Sarah has some too that have sat with the Great Skull. So I have ones that sat with Max, and I have ones that sat with Mitchell Hedges' skull, and then one like this one that I call Q that was actually included in the ceremony at Seneca Rock not Seneca Rock, West. I cannot think of it. It was out west, one of the big ones. I'm sure you know it, Melissa. It's on the tip of your tongue to help me out here. No, it's in Sedona area that way. But anyway, but there was like this coming together of elders from all kinds of different traditions. And the skull that I have was included in these empowerments and all these things. So like we have, between Sierra and myself, I'm sure we have some skulls that you could sit with and get some amazing downloads and carapies from.
I was going to say Bob has been with Max.
Yeah.
So
that's we don't need Max.
So
yeah.
He's mouthy. Bob.
Yes, he is. That's why you need to give him tequila before he start. If I start hearing Bob, that I know Melissa's really been neglecting him, because he's yelling at me for his tequila.
Yeah. So I may be a couple minutes late, and I have to go to Walmart and buy tequila. But yeah, so I guess we're putting together a workshop as we sit here live. So sorry to bore you guys.
Cool.
But well, thanks for joining us, guys, as we get to 11:02.
Yeah, we're definitely past our 1 hour mark.
Yeah. Making notes here to remember. So in case any of us are like, what did we say? What? We will be back next Thursday. Do we know if Zane's able to join next week?
He said for the foreseeable future, unless he says otherwise, he's available. So like today, he said otherwise, so he's not here. But
did he tell you this morning?
Tell me what this morning?
That he wasn't here?
No, I knew last week.
Oh, okay. I was like, I was to say, hey, by the way.
Yeah, well, you weren't on the stream last week, but last week he talked about the event that he's at, and it was really cool. I had thought about going down too, but it's like a 3-hour drive, and I got other fish to fry currently. But it would have been cool. There was a real Caro, quote unquote, a real Caro that's going to be there doing a despacho, and it sounded like a fun time.
Yeah. One of these days, I want to go to one of his little outside of Goddess Elite ran things. But it's always a scheduling thing.
This one was not his thing. He was just one presenter of many at somebody else's thing in Athens. But it was cool. Just anytime there's a Caro, it's kind of a neat thing to see the real, not real deal, but like someone from Peru and hearing directly. I don't know. We had one on one of our calls once. Zane brought in one of his teachers on a Zoom call, and we had that from Peru, and that was just a really cool experience. And so you never know, that may happen in this program where we have one of the online portions where we might have one of Zane's teachers on. No pressure, Zane, when you watch us on the replay. I'm not committing him, but I'm saying that things like that may be possible in the upcoming program. Yeah, I remember we were out there, and like one of the students, he's looking, he's like, "Do we have a Paqo on the call?" And he was so excited. It was a great moment, like when people realized, because we did it and we surprised everyone, like no one knew it was going to happen, and then everybody's hopping on the call. And it's like, well, this is why you should show up for class. You never know. You never know what's going to happen.
All the special things.
Yep.
All
I don't
right,
think Zay knew it was going to happen until it did.
Shaman surprises on Shaman time. It's a thing.
All right, everyone. But thank you for joining us. We'll be back next Thursday, and we'll see what shenanigans we get into. And between now and then, if you think of questions, please type them in the comments or send them in advance, and we're happy to answer whatever's on your mind.
All right, guys.
Are you pushing the button?
I can push button.
Okay, you push the button. Bye, guys.